The weight of legacy, a family's silent expectations. I don't know when it all started to feel like something was off. It wasn't a single moment, a big blow-up, or an argument that set things in motion. It was more like a slow leak, an unnoticed drip that turned into a flood. At first, it was easy to ignore. I was 27, on the verge of something big in tech, designing apps, working on projects that could change the way people interact with the digital world. My dream job was within reach and everything seemed like it was finally falling into place. But then there was my parents' store, that tiny family-run place on the corner of Main and Maple. It wasn't anything special, really. Just a store that sold trinkets, postcards, and the occasional piece of local art. My parents ran it like they had for the last 30 years, slowly, steadily, and with no intention of changing anything. But somewhere in the background, they started asking for more. It started small. "Hey, Ethan, could you swing by and help out for a few hours this weekend?" Simple enough, right? At first, I didn't mind. I'd go in, organize a few shelves, help with inventory, maybe even chat with the few customers that wandered in. No big deal. But after a while, those few hours started stretching into entire afternoons. Then it became weekends, then entire days after work. And suddenly, it wasn't just about helping anymore. It was about expectations. My mom would call at 3 p.m., right in the middle of a project at work, asking me to stop by. "Ethan, could you come by for an hour?" she'd ask, her voice casual, as if it were just another request. But it wasn't a request. It was a command wrapped in that same gentle tone that made it impossible to say no. I tried to push it aside. I had a life of my own, projects, deadlines, dreams. My career was just beginning to take off. Yet, every time I stepped foot in that store, the weight of their unspoken expectations pressed heavier on my shoulders. They didn't need to say it out loud. It was in the way they looked at me, the way my dad's eyes would linger on me just a second too long, as if silently asking me to stay. At first, I could handle it. I could do both. But after a while, the lines between my life and theirs blurred. My career, the thing I had worked so hard for, started to feel like an afterthought. And the store? It was becoming my second life, whether I wanted it or not. There was always that sense of guilt, though, that I couldn't shake. Guilt that I wasn't there enough. Guilt that I wasn't doing enough. I would leave the store and head back to my apartment, trying to focus on coding or working on my next big idea, but my mind kept drifting back to the place I didn't want to be. I wasn't supposed to be here. Not like this. But every time I thought about stepping away, the question always came up: who else would keep the store running if not me? It was a question I couldn't answer. Not yet. The longer I stayed, the heavier the weight became. Each time I stepped into the store, it felt less like a favor and more like a trap. My days blurred together, a scramble of coding, meetings, late-night brainstorming sessions, and then an abrupt shift into the dim lighting of the shop, the smell of old wood and dust that seemed to settle into my bones. There was always something else to do, orders to process, inventory to organize, customers to manage. It was never just a couple of hours anymore. It was a life I hadn't asked for, but it was slowly becoming mine. It wasn't just the physical toll of the work. It was the mental exhaustion, the constant tug-of-war between what I wanted and what was expected of me. My parents never outright asked me to take over. But the way they looked at me, the way they leaned on me for everything, it was like they assumed I had no other choice but to stay. And then there was Lily, my younger sister, always living her best life. Every time I saw her posts, it felt like a knife in my side. Bali, Paris, Tokyo, those were the places she'd spend her weekends, not stuck in a store, sorting receipts and wiping down dusty counters. She was always so carefree, always finding herself, while I was finding myself buried under a mountain of responsibilities. I'd scroll through her Instagram, those endless photos of sunsets and cocktails, and it was like I was looking at a different reality altogether. She had everything handed to her, the freedom to explore, to live, to do whatever she wanted without a second thought. Meanwhile, I was slowly losing myself in the process of keeping this business alive, losing my dreams, losing my spark. It was hard not to resent her. Not because she was living her life, but because she didn't have to think about the things I was thinking about every single day. She didn't have to bear the burden of a family legacy she didn't want, one that was slowly eroding mine. And every time I talked to my parents, it was the same thing. "Ethan, you're so dependable. You're the one who gets things done." My dad's voice echoed in my head, that tired yet hopeful tone. The same tone he used when he asked me to come in just for an hour. But it was never just for an hour. I began to feel the resentment building. With every passing day, the walls around me seemed to close in a little more. I wasn't just helping anymore, I was running the store. And Lily? She was out there living her best life, posting every moment of it for the world to see. It wasn't just jealousy, it was frustration, anger even. She got to be the free spirit while I was the one holding the weight of everything. And don't get me wrong, I loved my family. But this wasn't the life I had imagined for myself. I'd worked hard to get to where I was in tech, to finally carve out my place in a world of innovation and possibilities. But the store? It felt like an anchor, dragging me down, while my sister floated effortlessly above it all. Before I share what happened next, the moment I confronted my mom and dad, and the words that forever changed everything. I want to connect with you, my amazing viewers. Where are you watching from? Drop your country's flag in the comments below. And if you've ever had to sacrifice your dreams for something else, hit that like button, because this story is just getting started. That night, after yet another long shift at the store, I could feel the anger building in me like a storm. It wasn't just the endless hours, or the unspoken expectations that had been weighing on me for years. It was something deeper. It was the crushing realization that no matter how much I gave, it was never enough. They kept asking and I kept giving. But no one ever asked Lily. I couldn't take it anymore. I found myself walking into the living room, where my parents were sitting, watching TV as if everything was fine. I stood there for a moment, my hands clenched into fists, trying to hold back the torrent of words that had been bubbling inside me for so long. "Mom, Dad, we need to talk," I said, my voice low but steady. My mom looked up at me, a slight furrow in her brow. "What's wrong, Ethan? You look upset." I took a deep breath, my heart pounding in my chest. This was it. This was the moment I had been holding back for years. "Why is it always me?" I asked, my voice breaking slightly. "Why am I the one who has to carry this? The store, the bills, the responsibility, it's always me. Why isn't Lily ever asked to help out? Why does she get to live her life while I'm stuck here?" My parents exchanged a look, and I could see the familiar tiredness in their eyes. "Ethan, don't start," my dad said, his voice gentle but firm. "You know your sister has her own path. She's always been different." Different. That word again. It was always the same excuse. Lily was different, and I was the dependable one. I could feel the resentment rising, boiling over as I took a step closer to them. "Different," I spat. "She's out there living her dream, traveling the world, going to art shows, posting pictures on Instagram like everything's perfect. And I'm here, stuck in this store doing everything for this family. And for what? So you can keep pretending like I'm doing this because I want to?" My dad looked at me, his expression softening. "Ethan, you know how important the store is to us. It's a legacy. We've always relied on you, and we know we can count on you." I couldn't help but laugh, a bitter sound that filled the room. "A legacy?" I repeated, the word tasting like acid on my tongue. "You mean it's something you expect me to carry because it's always been this way? It's not about what I want. It's about what you need. And you know what? I'm tired of it. I've given everything to this place. And for what? To be your backup plan." There was a long silence, and I could feel the tension in the room thickening. My mom's eyes started to well up, but I couldn't find it in me to care. This had been building for too long, and now it was spilling over. "Ethan, we never meant for it to be like this," my mom said, her voice quiet. "But we need you. Your sister. She's not ready to help." I couldn't stop myself. The words came pouring out, faster than I could think. "Why? Because she's finding herself? Is that what you really think? That I'm the only one who's capable? The only one who cares about this store?" My voice cracked as the frustration bled into every word. "She's out there living her best life, posting photos from Paris and Bali, while I'm here, trying to keep this place afloat. And you never ask her for anything. Not once. Not ever." The words hung in the air, and I could feel the weight of them pressing down on all of us. My mom looked like she was about to speak, but I couldn't stop now. "No, I'm done," I said, my voice trembling with anger. "I've sacrificed my dreams for this family, for this store, for years. And all I've ever gotten in return is this, an endless string of expectations and guilt. I'm done being the one who fixes everything, who holds it all together. I turned to walk out, but something stopped me. I couldn't leave without saying it. You know what? Go ask Lily. She's got all the time in the world to travel and post about her journey. Maybe she can help you for once. The silence that followed was deafening. My dad didn't say anything. My mom didn't try to stop me. I walked out, and the door closed behind me with a finality that felt like a weight lifting off my chest. But even as I walked away, I knew I wasn't done. This wasn't the end. It was just the beginning. I wasn't going to be the one who carried the weight anymore. And that night, I did something I'd never done before. I opened my phone, found one of Lily's latest posts. Her, lounging by a pool in Bali, looking carefree and flawless, and I screenshotted it. I didn't think twice. I sent it to my parents with one simple message. If you need money, maybe try asking Lily. She seems to be doing just fine. Then I turned off my phone, leaned back in my chair, and finally allowed myself to breathe. For the first time in years, I felt like I was in control. Before I share what happened next, whether my family ever responded or how Lily reacted, I want to connect with you, my incredible viewers. Have you ever had a moment when you finally stood up for yourself? Drop a comment below and share your story. And if you've ever had to face an overwhelming responsibility, hit that like button, because this story is far from over. The days that followed felt strange. It was as if the weight I had been carrying for so long was finally lifted. But there was no immediate relief. Instead, there was an emptiness that lingered. A quiet space where all those years of sacrifice, all the moments I had put aside my own life, had once filled. I tried to focus on my work, throwing myself into my career the way I had before, but something felt different. It wasn't just that I was free from the constant pull of the store. It was more than that. I was finally choosing myself. I had never given myself permission to do that before. The phone rang one evening. It was my mom's name on the screen, and for a moment I hesitated. Part of me wanted to pick up, to hear her voice, to hear the worry in her tone. But another part of me, the part that had been buried for so long, knew I couldn't go back. Not now. Not after everything that had happened. I let it go to voicemail. That night, I couldn't shake the thought of them. My parents, my sister, the store. It all felt so distant now, like a chapter of my life I was finally closing. But there was one final thing I had to do. Something that would make it clear, not just to them, but to myself, that I was no longer the one who had to bear the burden of their choices. I opened Instagram, found one of Lily's recent posts. Her in a glamorous villa in Mexico, lounging by the pool with a cocktail in hand. The perfect image of freedom. The perfect image of the life I had never been able to live. I screenshotted the photo not out of spite, but out of the simple realization that she, too, was capable. She had her own life. And, for the first time, I wasn't going to be the one to hold everything together anymore. I opened my messages to my parents. I typed the words slowly, carefully, as if each letter carried the weight of everything I had given up until now. If you need money, maybe try asking Lily. She seems to be doing just fine. I stared at the screen for a moment, my finger hovering over the send button. Then, with a deep breath, I pressed it. And just like that, I let go. There was no immediate response. No frantic calls. No desperate pleas for help. Just silence. But it was the kind of silence I needed. The kind that allowed me to finally hear myself again. I thought about everything that had led up to this moment. The years of sacrifice, the resentment that had built, the feeling of being invisible in my own life. But as I sat there, staring at my phone, I realized that for the first time in a long time, I wasn't afraid of what would come next. I was free. I could feel the weight lifting from my chest as I moved forward. I didn't know what the future would look like, but for the first time I wasn't afraid of it. I was choosing my own path, following my own dreams, and I knew that whatever happened next, I would be okay. Before I share what happened after I made that decision, whether my family ever came to terms with it or not, I want to hear from you. Have you ever had to make a tough decision for yourself, even when it meant letting go of something or someone you loved? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. And if you've ever felt the power of choosing yourself, hit that like button. Because this story, for me, is only just beginning.